Hey, we're live.
Yay.
That means I have to play this music, right?
Do it.
Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin podcast, your source for IT news, commentary, and a healthy dose of paranoia. All right, welcome to episode 46 of the Iron Sysadmin podcast. Tonight, I'm your host, and I'm joined by, believe it or not, all of the co-hosts for a change. We've got, in no particular order, Dustin, say hi.
Hola.
Yeah, you have to say hi. It's audio podcast, remember.
Hi.
Charles.
Hi.
And Jason, who might forget he's muted. Nope, there we go.
No, I'm capable, thank you.
Oh, it's a good start to the show, guys.
I'm number one. All right. Numero uno.
Throwing around the mute power already. All right, so we've got somewhat of a hard stop tonight, so we're going to try to get right into things, starting with some interesting news coming out of the EU. Apparently, copyright is the topic for what? For Parliament. Charles, you linked this in. You want to talk about it, or?
Yeah. This is not final yet because the way the EU makes laws involves a lot of consultation processes, and then the individual member countries then have to adopt it. But the recommended legislation would do a couple of things that are not great for the open internet. One is putting a burden on sites that host content to identify and remove infringing content. Essentially, for example, setting up a system similar to saying I think YouTube has, where be able to detect if somebody uploads copyrighted material, immediately prevent that, and then essentially force the person to follow up and be like, no, it's not copyrighted. The other is forcing the essentially it amounts to a link tax, is forcing news organizations that, or rather sites that link to news organization articles, to pay for the privilege.
Yeah, I read over this pretty thoroughly, especially with all of the similar things that have occurred in the U.S. over the years. The whole thing just sounds really broad and really hard to support. For content providers, not for content providers, but for content, I don't know what you call it, rebroadcasters, things like YouTube, things like news aggregators, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, the whole thing just sounds like it's going to put a big burden, especially on places like YouTube, right?
Well, YouTube could probably handle it better. I mean, where it really sucks, if you're a small operation, the structural costs of doing business in the EU go up dramatically. And if you're a company in, say, the US, you might actually, like with the GDPR, you start facing a question, well, it costs this amount of money to do business with Europe. How much do I care?
Yeah, right. I am curious how this affects entities that aren't based in the EU. Can they basically just ignore this, or do they have to worry about this as well? Sort of like GDPR, right? Like when international law changes, or when law in a different country changes, and it doesn't necessarily change in the U.S., right? So, say the NFL, who's broadcasting from the U.S., do they now have to interact differently with EU-based sites? What about people like us who are talking about the news and talking about things in the U.S.? If I'm talking about, say, soccer that came out of the EU, do I have to worry about whether I'm paying the link tax? Like, I don't even know how this works.
Ask a lawyer in a couple of years if it actually
right, exactly.
But possibly.
Right.
I mean, when you see sometimes, like with the Berne Convention, is a country will do a thing with copyright law, and then other companies will follow, or other countries will follow suit to harmonize their laws, but you can still get some fairly wide variations. I mean, there have been attempts to get laws like this on the books in the States, and they've never really gone anywhere.
Yeah, and one of the sort of unintended consequences, I think, here, and it does go into this in the article, sites like YouTube. I know I keep harping on YouTube. That's mainly because it's sort of close to me, because I also run a YouTube channel full of Jeep stuff, right? It's already difficult for the little guy to get started on YouTube. It's difficult to figure out copyright. It's difficult to figure out what can be monetized and what can't. Now, on top of that, they're going to be monitoring extra close for copyrighted material or material that may infringe on this law if it's passed. And it just makes headaches for anybody who's running content like that, because now they're going to have to go through these processes. I mean, A, they're going to have to be extra careful what they're posting, and B, if they get inappropriately flagged when they haven't done anything wrong, which never happens on YouTube, now they have to go through extra hoops to get their content re-enabled, right? So, yeah, this is more than just we're trying to protect copyright. There's a lot of trickle-down effects from this sort of law in any country.
It's definitely designed to protect major copyright holders in the EU. I mean, that's your goal, sure, but what it'll probably just mean is there are just going to be fewer things driving traffic. I mean, when Spain tried this on its own a couple of years ago, didn't Google just de-index most Spanish news organizations rather than deal with it?
I don't remember this, but it sounds like something Google might do.
Yeah, it was with Google News, because they took exception to Google News aggregating Spanish publications without compensation.
Right.
And Google's like, we're driving traffic to you. That's great for you. And,
it is compensation. You're welcome. Yeah, I guess we'll see where it goes.
Yeah,
Be
we'll see.
I assume.
Yeah, the EFF had a bunch of stuff out about this. Yep. Obviously, they don't like it at all.
No, they wouldn't. All right, moving on to possibly the most awesome side channel attack I've ever heard of. So this is from Threatpost, and I full disclosure, I heard about this on Hack Naked News. Episode 287. I could be way off on that. Anyway, this is awesome, right? So when your display displays something, you can't hear it, but it's like the sound of the display emits inaudible noise, right? So like the frequency of the lights or whatever. I don't know. I don't fully understand how it makes noise, but it makes noise that we can't hear. But your computer microphone or your cell phone microphone, or I don't know, this microphone here in front of me can hear it.
Maybe even a dolphin.
Maybe even a dolphin can hear it. Apparently, some researchers at, where was this? Columbia and University of Michigan, and University of Pennsylvania and Tel Aviv University have come up with a proof of concept where they can actually read your screen based on how it sounds being picked up by your own microphone. That, I mean, holy crap, right?
So this is a form of what's called Van Eck phreaking. So if you're into reading things, Nate, I know how much you like to read. The Cryptonomicon's about yay thick. Should take you to the end of your life to get through. Anyway, back.
Same for me, Nate. Don't feel bad.
Yeah, I'm just not a fast reader. Give me an audiobook any day.
So there's this awesome book called Cryptonomicon, and in there they really go in deep with a really good description of Neil Stephenson. Yeah. With a really good description of what Van Eck phreaking is. In the case of the book, they're using it with CRTs, which was, of course, at the time something that was known. They've effectively done the same thing here, but using the frequencies from the LCD instead of a CRT.
Yeah, right. So, and they also go in to mention that they could actually tell what you're typing on like an on-screen keyboard. It's that precise, which is kind of scary, really, because
indeed,
what do you type on your cell phone? What do you type all your passwords in with? Yeah, on-screen keyboard. I've heard of people claim that they can actually hear typing on a keyboard, but I never quite believed it because keys kind of all sound the same to me. But so this sounds a little more precise than that.
That's also an attack where you can. It's not so much hearing. I mean, hearing comes into it, but it's
like
amount of time taken between tapping on the keys and knowing the position of the hands before they start typing, and then you can sort of.
So if
the key to solve that is to hold your hands like this when you type, so they can't,
or just not type properly. No home row here, baby.
Yeah, right. My home row's off by 3.
You just type with your face. Just repeatedly slam your head against the keyboard until what you want comes out on the screen. It usually takes a while to get what you want out on the screen, but nobody's going to be able to.
Well, in the process, you secure yourself. You lock yourself out of accounts. I mean, many advantages. Wow. They also have something to block mics too. I mean, they have those plugs. I've never purchased one. They're like overly priced, but basically it's meant to. Yeah, it's meant to emulate. It's meant to emulate something being plugged in, like physically hardware wise. So it tries to use that as the microphone source. But I mean, even that can be changed,
like a dummy mic or something.
Yeah, basically. I mean, ultimately, if you want to disable it, there are clips inside of computer cases that you can unplug.
It more or less tricks your computer software-wise into thinking there's already a mic connected.
Yes, and a baby.
Dustin's being drawn away by a screaming baby.
It's okay. My wife's got it. Hold on.
Take the time you need. It's fine. We'll carry on. All right.
My wonderful wife's on the cut. She's got it.
Good. That's awesome.
Okay. Your child is very, very upset about this attack.
Yes.
He is upset.
I believe.
What exactly was he doing on his computer that he needs to be that upset?
Just the threat scared him.
Just the threat.
He's easily scared these days.
I believe that when Paul talked about it, he recommended wrapping your monitor in tinfoil.
Nice.
Because then, I don't know.
It works.
Paul.
Then you can't use your monitor either. It's great.
Exactly. Then you can't use it. Okay, so moving on to the next interesting article. And I just have to say, I told you so. Remember, I don't know, 3-4 episodes ago, we talked about how the folks behind Fortnite, who I keep forgetting their name, the game company behind Fortnite.
Epic Games.
Epic.
How they're like, yeah, we're totally going to offer Fortnite for Android, but we're not going to put it on the Play Store. We're gonna make it a download on our website, and you can totally download it from there, and it'll be fine, right?
What could go wrong?
I forget which of you I had on the show that night because we haven't all been in the same place in forever. But
it sounds familiar. I'm not sure.
There was I believe I said something about how this is a horrible idea because what you'll end up having to do is turn off the unknown sources protection or enable unknown sources, and you're going to have to trust either a third-party store or a direct download, and the updates are going to be a problem. Well, guess what? Apparently, in the Fortnite download, they have found a vulnerability.
No.
Which you can...
What's that?
I mean, call it conjecture here, but it could be that if they had published this through the Google Play Store, which does vet their apps, they may have found this before it was ever released to any people.
It's greater chance.
It's got a really stupid name too. It's the man in the disk attack.
Oh, the vulnerability does.
Yeah.
The man in the disk. MITD, but there it is.
Yeah. So there's another interesting bit to this one. So
a bit.
I don't know if it's in this article, but turns out Google has this vulnerability too in a bunch of their apps.
Oh,
never. Google found it. According to this article, Google's the one that found the vulnerability.
Google found it,
and then
they hold the cards.
Well, they recognize it, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
and then they're like, "Oh crap, it's everywhere."
Yeah, after this came out, and there was the big pushback from Epic and everything else. A number of people, I don't know if they were from Epic or somewhere else, pointed out that a bunch of Google's apps have the same attack. So, pot kettle.
Yeah, but it's also saying that Google had a patch for this on August 16th. which I think is before Epic released. I don't know when Epic released
No,
this.
Epic Games responded and put the patch in place on
August
August 16th.
Google's claims and put a patch on August. Sorry, I'm like skimming the end of the article, which apparently I didn't get to, and I thought I did. So yeah,
and apparently Checkpoint found this, not Google.
Huh. That's interesting. The podcast that referred to this, which alerted me to it, said Google had found it. Guys, I'm sorry.
Well, okay.
It's a good thing Jason's here to tell me when I'm wrong.
It was first publicly disclosed by Checkpoint. Who actually found it first is a good question.
Roy just gave us a link in the Slack channel referencing Checkpoint.
Good. Listen, I have entirely too many chats to follow right now. Apparently, our YouTube chat is exploding at the moment.
I'm not watching that one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. None of us are, but people are chatting. It's fun. Good job, viewers. Thank you for participating.
We can give a shout out to some of the B-Sides Delaware crew that's listening too. Hi, gang.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
Hello. Nice.
Apparently, shamelessly plugging our show link for tonight in every Slack I have access to helped out. All right, so moving on from Fortnite. This one's kind of an interesting article. It's from ZDNet. Have you guys heard about Google is selling their own multi-factor devices now? They're calling the Titan, I believe. They're like FIDO compliant.
Yeah,
so key, similar to like a YubiKey, but there's also this like Bluetooth button dongle, which apparently also, I don't know if they're interchangeable, the dongle and the key. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's a wireless one, and there's the U2F types, and there's lots of different keys these days. But yeah, Google started with the YubiKeys a couple of years ago internally.
Yeah.
And I think using them for some of their two-factor stuff. And now they seem to be switching or recommending that people switch over to their Titan keys.
Yeah, so I like the USB keys that you touch to enter a code, right? But before we go into this article, I just want to mention that I'm and it could simply be because I don't understand Bluetooth well enough, but the idea of a Bluetooth security token kind of scares me, because security token over wireless, yeah, I see you have a YubiKey. Security token over a wireless protocol seems, I know Bluetooth it's encrypted, right? It's supposed to be secure and paired and all that stuff. And
all that cool stuff.
I also have a YubiKey, Jason. Thank you.
Ooh,
the only special one. Mine's on a lanyard, see?
Ooh,
I have a second key. I just don't know where the hell it went.
I mean, the broadcast range of Bluetooth is fairly limited. I mean, you'd have to be pretty close to intercept it.
I know some hackers who will.
Okay.
Yeah, Bluetooth has a decent range. It's not like NFC, right? So some of the
depends on what's being used though, Nate. If it's BLE, BLE is much shorter. I mean, you can have range with BLE, and even with BLE with spec 4.1, because I've been trying to think of ways to do something interesting with the Derby project, which I'm proving to be very difficult. Channel hopping, and if you don't understand the pseudo random method to hop channels, it's very hard to actually intercept and have a man in the middle attack. From what I understand, I mean, if you can figure out what the pseudo random key is to go to the next channel, you can try to intercept a communication process. I don't know the terminology. Very new at reading about it, but it seems like it'd be better than wireless. Just straight out having like a 2.4 hertz AP setup. You know what I mean? But yes, I agree. Somebody will figure out a way. There's always a way.
So I assume the reason they have the Bluetooth, button dongle is for the mobile use case, right? It's hard to plug a USB key into your mobile device unless you have an adapter handy, or unless the device is like a USB-C compatible device to begin with. YubiKey solved that by having a YubiKey with a built-in NFC chip, which I thought was a better solution. Again, it's wireless, but I think NFC is much closer range, depending on how you build it, than Bluetooth is.
So range-wise, back in 2004,
whoa,
at DEF CON, they created what they called the Bluetooth sniper.
Look at that thing. Badass.
Which I'm trying to remember. I can't find the distance that they posted, but I swear this was like between 1 and 2 miles away. They were able to crack Bluetooth on a phone.
Wow.
That's nuts.
That is pretty nuts.
Now, along with that went a warning that said anyone anywhere close to this thing will probably never have children.
I mean, there's sacrifices for everything.
Yeah, right. Is it worth the sacrifice is the question. Yeah. So anyway, what the article's talking about is apparently in order to enroll in Google's, I forgot the name already, Advanced Security something or other.
Advanced Protection Program.
Advanced Protection Program. You'd think with such a simple name, I would remember it.
Yeah, there's an app for that.
It's an APP. That's hilarious. Anyway, the key. Sorry, you cut out there, Dustin. But apparently that was a hilarious rap you were just trying to put out.
APP, yeah, you know me.
Oh yes, that was hilarious. I think it was better when you were cut out. Anyway.
Oh.
So what ZDNet is trying to tell us is that if you enroll in APP and then click on their link to go buy the recommended security token, you're being sent to not the Google store to buy the Titan, but to like an Amazon link to this third-party Chinese key, which I don't know. I think, Jason, we were talking before the show. I guess the link here is that the Titan is the same key, but with different firmware on it. Did I get that right?
Yeah. So according to the article, the Titan is basically a white labeled Fascian. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but there's this key called a Fascian multipass FIDO security key. It's the same thing as the Titan, and apparently Google's getting them and putting new firmware on them. And this goes beyond the key. Just the key comes from China. Apparently it's sold by or built by a Chinese firm that it also has ties to Chinese military and is, I guess, known for having put backdoors in these things before. So
that's awesome.
The bit here is that Google has a key that's supposed to be more secure, and yet when you sign up for the advanced protection, it's telling you to buy this Chinese-made key with their firmware on it and not the Google one, which seems like both a lost opportunity for selling their own keys, as well as a security problem.
The one thing I'm curious about is apparently when the Titan went on sale, it sold out like a lot faster than Google expected, and they were back ordered. So I'm curious if that's why they're linking this other arguably lower quality key. You know, maybe because there's no supply of the Titan at the moment, and they don't want people that are trying to enroll in this program to have to wait on a back order. I don't know if that's it.
That's possible,
but it would make sense because I know that they were having supply problems, not problems, but they were just out of supply, and they were back ordered. I can say that it'll be interesting to see what happens once people who are interested in the security of the Titan get their hands on it and start poking at it to see what comes out of this. I haven't bought one myself, even though I was very tempted to go ahead and back order one. The YubiKey's been working great for me. I don't really feel like I need a different key at the moment, but as much as I like Google devices. The other question I really have about this key is why in God's name did they make it white? It's going to be dingy gray marked up with keys in like 27 seconds.
Google's all about the brand, man. Same thing.
I know. It's like, it's got to be white. You're going to put it on your keychain and it's going to look terrible. I mean, even my YubiKey, which is black, is all marked up. I mean, look at that. It's not even on my keychain. It's just in my pocket with my keys.
This reminds me of the Google Wallet card that they released back before they eliminated Google Wallet debit cards. It was a white card. And I said, wow, that's cool, but it's going to get dirty in my wallet, you know?
Oh, yeah, it looked horrible. I used that for a while. I was kind of bummed when they got rid of it because it was great for travel. I would just load the thing up, and then I would take it with me. And if I lost it or it got stolen or it got skimmed or whatever, there's no money there when my trip's over.
Exactly. Now you're gonna make me dig. I probably won't be able to find it. That's okay.
I think I still have mine somewhere too. I didn't cut it up. Did I cut it up? I might have cut it up.
Bad boy. Tisk tisk.
So anyway, I guess it's not. Yeah. So one of the reasons I included this is because a lot of people were reading this article as though the Titan was backdoored and Google was selling a backdoored security key. And I don't know that that's what they're trying to say here. The article is long. It talks about a lot of different topics, and I don't think it's saying that the Titan is backdoored. It's that the key that they're selling you instead of the Titan is sold by a company that we shouldn't be trusting.
Right. And the article isn't saying that key is backdoored either. They're saying that there are strong ties to the Chinese military, and that it's possible they are backdoored.
Right.
But I don't know that anybody's actually found a backdoor on them at this point.
Right. Yeah, so that's
scary. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I talked. It seems like every time we talk at the same time, you get trampled.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was going to say, if you recall Lenovo, remember when they had the boot sector altering firmware, right? That would reinfect the operating system every reboot, no matter how many times you removed it. That'd be interesting if you had a firmware modification capability too. That would be really, really bad on Google's part if that were, a truth, but not
bit, yeah.
But it just kind of reminds me of that kind of interesting outcome that could happen. But
you plug in your security key and it Trojans your computer. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much. Or even the firmware that's being loaded on. If you run Google's firmware, or you can place. I don't know if you can. I don't know enough about it, but it'd be pretty funny.
All right, so Dustin, you included a link from the Hacker News because it wouldn't be an episode of Iron Sysadmin if we didn't have at least one article from the Hacker News about Office 365 phishing.
Yeah, so this is just Office 365. Basically, we're talking about a new way to obfuscate security systems. So they highlight upon what Microsoft Office 365 has as their advanced threat detection, which has AI and sandbox capabilities, what have you, to look for malicious systems, right? FireEye, Checkpoint, Fortinet, all these guys have similar email processing. Anyways, somebody figured out that a really easy way to get around being detected of their delivery is to just include like a link to Point, Dropbox, Box, any legitimate file service. And in that link, you would go to a document. Could definitely be a legitimate document. Okay, it's a PDF, whatever. Open document, still nothing malicious, but then there could be a link inside of that document. Or, that document itself could be like a, almost like a, right? Like a reference to something else, depending on the sharing service. So it's not really advanced method. It's actually pretty interesting if you think about it. I mean, it's a very simple way to obfuscate that, because you're not going to have a sandbox appliance actually, retrieve that and then try to do some type of user-based action, right? There isn't a capability to do that yet, where it literally will, follow a link, open a document, click on links inside of a document. We're not there yet. It would be cool if we were, but we're not. And that's basically what they're doing in this method. And it's not just Office 365. I've even seen it in, we don't use Office 365. So it's funny, but nothing crazy as far as it being advanced, I guess you could say, or complex by any means.
It's totally advanced and complex.
It's actually pretty brilliant. I mean, it's simple. Those are the best kind, right?
Yeah, right. And that's what makes phishing attacks effective. I mean, you get too complicated, and I mean, yes, complicated phishing attacks can also be effective, but simple stuff is easier to execute. And if people are falling for it and it's effective, then why make it difficult, right?
Indeed.
All right. So what else we got? One more article, guys, and then we'll be through the news in what feels like record time. It's been like 45 minutes.
Hang on, we can derail this.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
Do it.
Absolutely. So are you guys still use fax machines at all?
No.
You remember those things?
Don't pick up.
No.
It's fax.
I know that Back to the Future said fax machines are going to be the predominant way to talk back and forth to people in 2015, but they were wrong.
Hey, I've used a fax machine as a phone before when I didn't have cell service. It was great. That was a past employer. That was fun.
You can make those tones just naturally?
Yeah, right.
Boop, boop. Yeah, I actually used to be trained not only for transmission but also receiving.
Wow. I don't want to know where the fax came out of.
Some people like to know.
So anyway, I seem to remember a similar attack affecting printers not long ago, where you could send a specially crafted like print job to a printer, and it would actually execute malicious code on the printer. Oh, by the way, this is also from the Hacker News. But in this case, it's if you call a fax machine and send a specially crafted fax, you can own the freaking fax machine.
It almost sounds like you're saying that fax machines might use similar programming stacks to a printer.
An all-in-one solution, Jason?
Almost.
Like that?
Almost. It's also almost like I'm saying fax machines should die in a fire. Who needs fax machines anymore?
They're so cheap. They're cheaper than software.
I have successfully prevented fax machines from being added to our network for 4 years now.
Awesome. Continue, sir. Continue.
Let me tell you how pissed off the lawyers are.
Yes.
But we need paper. How can I file it if it's not in paper?
What's actually funny is that they have this belief that if you send a file via fax, like if you send a fax to somebody, the fact that you can shred it on the other end means that there's now no evidence and no audit trail of that fax.
I've heard of this belief,
which is not true.
Like, somehow faxes are more secure than any other mode of transportation or transmission of a document. I mean, there may have been a time when that was true.
Yep.
I think that time is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There may have been a time when a fax was the most secure way to transmit a document. Not anymore.
Plus, trying to explain to them that we don't actually have a phone line but
I have a phone on my desk. How can I not have a phone line?
No, it doesn't work that way.
No, look, I pick it up and there's dial tone.
I'll tell you what, just plug the fax machine into your cell phone.
No, look, like there's dial tone. I push the buttons and they go boop, 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 boop. There's a phone on my desk. Why can't I use a fax machine?
Oh boy!
For all of you that don't have
hurts.
Adjusted, this was a successful test.
Oh, I'll find a link to that song. You guys can all have the song.
What song is that?
It's Dr. Russ sent it to me a couple of years ago. It's basically modem tones put to a dubstep beat.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I mean, what better use for modem tones would there be in 2018 than dubstep?
Yep. Yeah, it's an interesting little song.
All right.
I'm looking forward to hearing it.
I'm going to say that at this point, we're probably done with the news.
Oh, you didn't actually mention what it's called, though. It's going back and forth.
No, I've got the transition going. Stop. I'm sorry, Dustin. What were you trying to say? Is it valid, or should I just think
it
you did it?
Going to Faxploit.
Oh, it's the name of the exploit, the Faxploit. Okay. Oh, okay. So yeah, that's the news, guys. So we were we were mentioned by a new listener in our Slack channel, Russ, right? No, Roy. Sorry, it's another R name. That we got mentioned on Reddit. Like, woohoo. I didn't even have to go and do it myself, which is what usually happens when we get promoted anywhere. It's me pretending I'm somebody else, posting links to our podcast. I mean, no, totally. It's listeners sharing our podcast. So yeah, I don't know if this link will work at the moment because apparently before the show, Reddit was not working.
Well, we said we were going to break something, so
we apparently broke Reddit by being mentioned on it, or maybe Roy broke Reddit. Roy, did you break Reddit?
Say that 3 times fast. Roy, did you break Reddit? Wow, actually,
that's not that hard to say.
Reddit's totally loading on my browser now.
Oh, good. Somebody fixed it.
Roy fixed Reddit.
Roy fixed Reddit. Thanks, Roy.
Shout out to Roy.
So anyway, yeah. So there's a link in our show notes, which we'll post after the show's, well, when the show gets posted. It basically, yeah, we were mentioned as like. Apparently, these people have never heard the show because they mentioned us as a good podcast to listen to. Well, here I'll just read the description. Like, this is a post of like good information for new sysadmins or people who want to be sysadmins or whatever. And here's the description they use to describe our show. Now, I mean, I didn't write this. Just remember that. Okay. This podcast features expert sysadmins covering all manner of topics of interest in their field. Since 2016, Iron Sysadmin has been covering the latest industry news, ideas, strategies, and chat, always with a focus on the practical needs of real-world sysadmins. Guys, I think we've succeeded. We can like, the show's done. We're good.
The last episode.
Somebody we didn't pay.
All right, Dustin, take us out.
Yeah, right. So anyway, let's see who posted this. We were too busy in the pre-show trying to figure out why Reddit didn't work.
Was it Roy?
Crispy Ducks.
Oh.
Thank you, Crispy Ducks, for the nice review. I mean, this is great. I'm actually very I'm flattered that we've been included as like a good source of information.
Nate, are you also Crispy Ducks on Twitter?
Shh. No one's supposed to know that.
I'm kidding. Thank you, Crispy Ducks.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I don't know. I literally, we found out about this during the pre-show. So I have done no digging as to like if this is part of some thread or if this is part of some like ongoing thing on Reddit. But it's in our sysadmin blogs. So yeah, pretty cool. I'm happy that people have noticed the show and are recommending it to other people. So if you're a listener and you want to recommend us to other people and you want like half a second of fame for that, feel free to send us a link to wherever you've recommended us. I appreciate it. I really do.
We all do. We all appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So something about B-sides. That must be you, Jason.
Yeah, that must be me. So happy to finally announce that B-Sides Delaware is going to be November 9th and 10th. We're going to be at the Delaware Technical Community College again this year, the Stanton campus. And the CFP will be open shortly. I believe it's imminent. We're just tidying up a couple things, and then we're going to open that up. Tickets will be on sale soon as well. So that's kind of where we are. We have, I mean, if you haven't been there, bring your wife, bring your husband, bring your kids. We've got pretty much lots of activities for everybody, between talks and spawn camp and just sort of hanging out. So lots of fun.
Yeah, my oldest daughter, who is 8 now, looks forward to going to B-Sides Delaware every year. So we missed 1 year, and she noticed. And we got to go back last year, and she has a blast every year.
Mutual friend of ours may be bringing his son for the first time this year, so looking forward to that. Yep.
Now I'm curious. Yep. We'll have to ask you after the show.
Yeah, he was at the meeting the other night. Likes physics.
Oh. Who you're talking about?
Yes. So
is he
anyway,
fine now? I guess he would be.
6, I believe.
Holy crap! That kid is 6.
Yep, I know.
Of course, my own daughter's 8, and that really.
Yep. Yeah.
Before I know it, she's going to be in college. Anyway,
on this episode of Iron Sysadmin Gets Old.
Yeah, right.
Back in my day.
Yeah, well, I mean, what really gets me is that my wife and I had children a little later than most couples do, so that makes me feel even older. So, anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Is pricing going to be similar to how it's been in the past? I know, like,
pricing
at one point it was free, and then it's Sorry, go ahead.
So it'll be the same as it was last year.
Okay.
It's $5 for a 1-day pass, $10 for a 2-day pass if you get it in advance.
Right.
Getting your tickets in advance and paying for them guarantees that you get a badge and all the various goodies that come along with that. We'll also have pre-orders for T-shirts as well. If you miss the pre-order badges or pre-registration rather, you can still make it in. At that point, it becomes free, but you don't get any of the goodies.
No goodie for you.
So the cool thing, I don't know if it translates across other B-Sides conferences. The cool thing about B-Sides Delaware is that you can almost go to this con for free, and
that's cool.
That's awesome. I just think that's awesome. People can share information. You can learn interesting things to do. There's there's interesting talks, and you can practically just walk up to the door the day of the con and just like participate, which is cool.
Yeah, the other bit that I failed to mention that I've just been corrected on. Thank you. Thanks, Kick. Anyway, purchasing your tickets in advance guarantees you lunch for those days that you purchase. Right. And $5 for lunch is, plus all the other stuff that you end up getting, is practically a free lunch. If you don't get your tickets in advance, then you don't get free lunch. And I guarantee it'll cost you more than $5.
Yeah, absolutely. Dustin, you seemed like you were trying to say something, and we kept talking over you.
No, that's okay. I could hear you were breaking up, so I'm not sure if others were also experiencing that.
Yeah, I noticed a bit of choppiness there. It must be. I'm guarantee it was on my end.
Well, basically, I agree with Nate. Nate was saying that he really likes B-Sides Delaware. So I've only been there, I think, 2 years now. This will be my 3rd year. Awesome community of people. You could pretty much talk to anybody, just like any other successful conference. A lot of activities, a lot of people to talk to, and just come and enjoy.
Yeah, I've been there twice.
Dustin, are you going to be the staff photographer again this year?
I don't know. I don't know if I proved myself worthy last year. I tried. We'll see. If not, I'll just volunteer. That's fine too. I'm good at things that are in nature and don't move. People, not so much. Not my forte.
People keep moving around. Yeah, it's tough.
I know. What the heck, man? Anyways.
Yep. So B-Sides Delaware. If you haven't been to a B-Sides, you should go to B-Sides Delaware. It's pretty awesome. We had an intern at work over the summer, and I was trying to convince him that he needs to get to B-Sides Delaware this year. So we'll see if he makes it or not. He's a senior in college now, going to Liberty University, which is where, like Virginia.
Oh, was he at Liberty? I thought he was at Lehigh.
Nope, Liberty.
Yeah, it's in Lynchburg, Virginia.
Yeah, so it'd be, I guess, a bit of a hike for him, but I think it's worth it for him to make it up. Because B-Sides Delaware is awesome. You guys are great. Anyway, I think that's it for the announcements. Anybody else had anything they needed to announce? Like, I don't know.
I would like to announce the end of the announcements.
Ah, good. Thank you. All right, so the only thing I had, we had an article I was going to cover as news, and we decided not to. It's I don't know if you guys are familiar with these Twitter moments. It's like Twitter lumps a bunch of tweets together and presents them as news.
Hey, I don't want to say it out loud or anything, but you're starting to sound like you're old.
Oh.
Ouch. Shut up. Get off my lawn!
Yeah, I still feel the heat from here.
So anyway, there was this interesting Twitter moment that I guess SETI had detected what they think could be life from a different solar system, different galaxy. Which I heard like a later tweet that said basically it's so far away that by the time we heard it, the civilization is probably dead.
But more importantly, if we run an algorithm against it, can we see their screen?
Aha!
That is a good question. That is a really, really good question.
Way to link back to the news section there, Jason.
Yeah, it's called the bridge right there, man. Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, I learned a term. I didn't know that.
I think it's called the bridge. Maybe I'm wrong. Somebody correct me.
Bridge,
I'm usually wrong.
Troubled water. Anyways,
Usually
fallback, maybe.
Oh,
callback. That could be.
Callback, yeah.
All right, so I think we're gonna move into the main topic, huh?
Do it.
Dustin always talks over my transitions.
You're welcome.
It just always happens. So tonight, I thought we'd chat a bit about everybody's favorite and most exciting topic: logging. I can hear the excitement. Everybody loves log files, right?
I long to be logged.
Charles, you probably like log files.
Allow me
to log files. I think
I'm going to answer like this. I absolutely love log files. It's getting them together and ensuring that they're there. That's the royal pain.
Indeed.
Oh, is that difficult?
Yes.
So I mean, like,
person, it's difficult.
to me, the most aggravating thing about logs in general is getting useful data out of them while it's useful. So that's I thought we'd talk a bit about. I mean, anybody who's worked at all in this industry knows what a log file is. I mean, it's basically a running log that a service, or well, I guess a service generates while it's running, that puts debugging information in some cases, or error information, or just general usage information into a text file, which you can then reference later to see what your service was doing. So
hopefully useful information.
Hopefully useful information. Well, I mean, I'm sure the people who wrote the service and told it how to write its log file assumed that this information would be useful.
Ah.
I have dealt with a number of programs that like to dump tons and tons and tons and tons of utterly, completely useless information into log files.
You know, but I have to say, before we delve... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I said, aren't passwords useful, though? That's not useless.
Yeah, right.
then there's that. Then there's that angle.
That's a back, right?
I have to say that certain languages of application have gotten less and less and less useful in their log output. They give you like very verbose stack traces and whatnot that in my opinion, as a not developer, as an administrator trying to operate the thing, find almost useless. Because, like, I'm not the guy who wrote the code, so looking at the stack trace sometimes points me in the right direction, but usually just gives me a phrase I can paste into Google, which I guess is useful. But anyway, I don't know. Log files used to be very, I mean, some log files are sort of plain text that anybody can just look at it and go like, oh yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. And others are just like this dump of verbose data that is almost useless because unless you understand how the application was written, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know if you guys have had a similar experience or not.
In both directions, both just as an administrator trying to consume not very useful log data, and then as a developer where I inherited an application that was incredibly chatty. Like it's outputting everything. I'm like, this is pointless. This is not helpful. So I started taking that back and trying to only output what I thought was relevant information. And then, I released the update. Lo and behold, a couple months later, I get it's not a nasty gram, but just a comment to the effect of, I relied on that. Can you put some of it back?
Oops. Everybody likes their log data in a different way, I suppose.
Don't touch log data.
Sorry, we cut off the first half of what you said there.
I said, don't touch another man's log data.
Exactly.
Same rule applies.
Exactly. So, and then that verbosity or lack of verbosity, in most cases, verbosity will lead to just eating up a bunch of disk space, right? So, obviously, you need to plan for that. But in most cases, that also means you need to have some way of rotating logs. And rotating logs, of course, simply means that the active log file is sort of stowed away in some kind of archive or at least non-active, log, and is maybe sometimes compressed. And then older logs are just deleted or archived in some other way. So that leads to, of course, you need to plan how rapidly that happens and how often those things are cleaned up. Because if you don't, you could lose valid log data. If you're trashing logs that are 2 days old and you're not storing them anywhere else, then you may want log data from 4 days ago and not have it. But if you keep 3 years of log data, well, that becomes sort of a storage nightmare, depending on how chatty your log is.
And it could even be worse than that. We had an incident about, I think this was about 6 months ago, where there was one particular log on, it was a Redmine server. We had not been rotating the production log. And
I remember this.
This was a pain in the ass to track down.
It was.
So the log had grown to, text log grown to 50 megabytes. We had an application, and we had Redmine configured to consume email from standard input. 50 megs was also the configured max size of a mailbox that Postfix can handle. So we hit 50 megs on the production log, and of course, Postfix has to interact with the production log. It just stopped working. Emails were no longer read from standard input because we had hit that limit. We started rotating the logs, and boom, magic, everything is working again.
Yeah, that was one of the odd. I remember these discussions, and it's like when you came to me and told me what the problem was, I'm like, what? The log file was too big, so it couldn't receive email.
But, a lot of applications make certain unspoken assumptions about how big log files are. Or worse, they sort of assume that they're not large. And so the behavior will become very unpredictable if you have large log files.
Right. And, so they assume you're rotating the log. Therefore, the log file never gets too big. So they just assume, it'll be tiny or it won't be that big, whatever. I wonder if there's some like weird esoteric documentation from Redmine or for Redmine that tells you to make sure that your logs are rotated. Otherwise, it could break your email delivery.
Not that I found.
You should have submitted a bug. Maybe you did. You probably did.
I didn't.
No. I'm disappointed, Charles.
There were bigger things on fire at the time.
Yeah, right. Like Muldoon not receiving email. So log rotation leads to log retention policies. And Jason, I know you and I have had discussions about log retention and documenting your policy. I don't know if you are in a position where you can elaborate on that, or if that's still just like a torch you carry.
So I've done this in a couple different places. So your log retention is relative to your, I guess, what industry you're in and what the regulations, if there are any, that you have to follow. So back in the day, we ran an ISP, and through a lot of reading and learning, we had settled on a log rotation of 30 days. And the reason we did that is ISPs tend to get a lot of court orders when people start behaving badly, and as long as you have a publicly, I'm not even sure that has to be public, but as long as your log rotation is documented and that you enforce it, when they come to get those logs, there's nothing there, and you can't get in trouble for it. In other places, like telcos, they sort of have their own thing. I wasn't really on the side where they were, where I was involved with that. At the college, we sort of made up our own. I don't remember what it was, but we made up our own and followed that. And that was based on information that we needed to have, and the period of time that we generally got asked for that. The industry that I'm in now is regulated, so we have a log rotation based on the regulations. So we rotate our logs on a pretty regular basis, but we have to retain them for like between 5 and 7 years. So we have lots of disk space for stuff like this. But the key is documenting it and then making sure that everything follows your log rotation, and that there's no systems that are misconfigured, because one misconfigured system with the right lawyer and the right discovery can sort of be difficult to get out of.
And that opens up the doors to really leverage some type of configuration management system to orchestrate those type of tasks. I know in the past episodes I haven't been a part of, but there's been discussions about Puppet and Chef and all the other solutions that are out there. So that's another reason why leveraging one of those types of solutions is very important, because you can almost guarantee that those are configured properly and having a consistent configuration when you start to manage a lot of hosts. I think that's another use value, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Right. So, right. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, we've certainly all been there, but there's absolutely nothing worse when you're trying to fix a system and the logs that you need to fix that system aren't where you thought they were going to be.
Yeah.
So you have that whole other step of, okay, where are they actually? Do they even exist? Can I get them somewhere? Because the system you're trying to fix may actually be dead. And if the logs weren't reported anywhere, you kind of have a problem.
Right. That does definitely become a problem. And that is where, if we're done talking about log retention, that's where the log management systems could come into play. Now, you could do something simple like, I run a NFS server or something that all of my logs rotate to, and they're retained there for whatever my maximum log retention is, right? That's like the simplest way to have a log management system. Or you could RSys log them over to a server. That's a little more sophisticated than just like storing them on NFS or something. But then you've got systems like Elk Stack, or like, I guess that's not Elk Stack anymore. It's what? Elastic something? Whatever. Elasticsearch. Is it Elasticsearch? Whatever. It used to be called Elk Stack. I think a lot of people still call it Elk Stack. Anyway, that and like Splunk, and I think Nagios has a log management tool. Jason, didn't you tell me you're using a new Graylog, right?
It's not new. Graylog is what we're using at the moment.
New
Elk,
compared
by the way, is Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana.
Graylog is?
No, Elk is.
Elk is.
Graylog is Graylog is like a Splunk clone, but I don't think it's. I've messed around with it a little bit. I was able to do more with Splunk, and maybe it's just that I don't know the language yet for Graylog, but sometimes when you pay for things, they work better.
That's what I was just saying. They have a revenue stream, so
Yeah, right. So it's nice to utilize, like Elk, for example, Elasticsearch, whatever they call themselves now. They have both a free and a pay for support version. Sorry, I cut out on you again.
I said open source. There was a delay.
Open source.
I held my breath and waited a couple seconds. Interesting. We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, no, it seems like if I speak and you speak at the same time, or if any of us speak and you speak at the same time, you go silent. I don't know why.
Thank you, Google, for you guys. I don't know.
That's it. Blame Google. It's all Google's fault because we
wouldn't have this problem if we still had net neutrality. That's what's going on.
Yes, that's absolutely it. Just like that fire department. Anyway, as I was saying, it's nice to utilize the free versions of pay for products, because you benefit from all those people that are paying for things to pay for the development of the tool, right? And then if the free features are good enough for you, you benefit from that. And if you ever need help, you can then pay for help, right? So that's handy. I don't know if Graylog has a for pay model or not. Jason could probably tell us about that if he's not too busy getting ready for his phone call at 8:30. He must be.
Yes, yes. Doing lots of things at once.
Yeah. I mean, if you got to cut out, you got to cut out. I was trying to get to the policy thing before you left.
That's fine.
We covered it. So yeah. Anyway, like Splunk, for example, we use Splunk, and before we started paying for Splunk, we started using the free version of Splunk. Now there's limitations there. You don't get enterprise like login capabilities, and there's a limit on like 500 meg per day, I think it is, that you can actually import into Splunk. And there are people that use the free version of Splunk in very creative ways. You know, they'll have several instances of it, and they'll just like divvy up their log files based on how many instances they have, and that works well enough for them. Or you can go pay for Splunk, which I don't know. It's a great tool, but it does add up. I mean, it gets expensive.
Yes, it does. It gets very expensive very quickly.
Right.
It's a great product. I've had the pleasure of using very basics of it that was licensed. I remember years ago, prior employments, standing it up with the free license, and I maxed it out in under 30 minutes.
Oh yeah.
I could hook up. And it's like, oh, you've exceeded your license. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I shouldn't try all these things at once now, should I?
Right. So, I mean, there's really useful things to throw at a log management system like Splunk. Yeah. Like firewall logs, for example. You can get ridiculously useful information out of your firewall logs. But there's such a quantity of data in a firewall log that you're going to be paying hand over fist to pay for that license. So I guess in that
was just the amount of detail in those logs. It wasn't like I was hooking up like 60 different sources at once. It was literally under four or five. And it was very easy to exceed that limit. So even though it's free, you wouldn't think 500 megs would add up quickly, but it does. And I'm curious, what do they measure that off of? Do they measure that off of disk space on the log server? Do they look at the actual per character storage cost? Like, how are they calculating that? I've never actually looked into that. Now that
I believe it's basically as the log file is ingested into Splunk, the throughput. It measures the throughput of the data that it's ingesting.
Yeah, it's the volume of logs per day.
Right. Right. Okay. So I mean, there's ways to fix that by pre-filtering your log files before they get to Splunk.
Yep.
But then obviously you don't have that data in Splunk, right? The other thing is you can play tricks with your license. Like you get you get several violations before they cut you off, right? So what you could do is say, like, once a month, I ingest all my firewall logs. And maybe that's like 400 gig of data when you've got a 10 gig license, right? It'll ingest it all. And then it'll give you a warning and say, don't do that again. And then if you wait, I think it's 14 days. It's like a 14-day window. After 14 days, all your warnings are gone and you could do it again. Right? So like there's ways to do this. So, but at any rate, I'm not advocating that you guys should abuse your Splunk licenses, but that's a thing that you could do. Now, another thing you could do is like take your firewall logs and put them into, I don't know, Elk, like open source Elk, free, off. Like there you go, and then all of your like web server and application logs go into Splunk, right? So then you'd have the data in something like Elk. You'd have the data indexable and queryable, but it wouldn't be going against your Splunk license. So that's another way to sort of handle things. So then it all comes down to how do you store the data? Because obviously it's all going to add up quickly. How long do you retain the data? How often do you purge it? That sort of thing. And that all I guess would come back to your logging policy, your log retention policy, that is.
Indeed.
All right, so we have anything else to talk about the exciting topic of logs? Charles, how about you got any cool stories about interesting log information you've pulled out of Splunk? I know you're one of our power users. maybe not power users, but you've definitely used it more to get more useful data than some of us have.
Yeah, I mean, so like here's an example of something we were looking at a few weeks ago. So we use, it's kind of cool. There's for anybody who has to administer WordPress at scale, we use a tool called Cavalcade to run our cron instead of using WP cron. So you can really mimic like actual Unix cron that way. It's much more reliable. And we use systemd.
Are you saying for the individual sites, or are you using like the multi-site implementation of WordPress?
Multi-site.
Okay.
But so you can just point Cavalcade at the multi-site, but it'll run the cron for all the individual sites. But without having to do any like weird hacky things with like cycling through sites, it just works. We've been very happy with it, and we run it with system. We use systemd to invoke the runners that hit the site and do the jobs. But we were having problems with the runners occasionally crashing, and we discovered that, among other things, it's a really bad idea to configure a systemd process to restart immediately on crash. At least in this case it was, because what happened was it crashed because we had a little situation with the database clusters. Just leave it as situation, which was resolved fairly quickly, but it wasn't resolved quickly enough because, the job tried to restart itself 5 times in 8 seconds or so, and then of course it just stopped. This is something that shows up in var log messages. We're feeding that into Splunk, so we can see the Cavalcade failures. But then we change it so it starts every 5 minutes. But we set up a Splunk alert, like, okay, tell us if Cavalcade crashes. Well, it turns out it does crash from time to time. But it restarted itself. So with Splunk, you could do a transaction where you can say, okay, let's group these events by certain values. So you can effectively have a query like, hey, Splunk, send us an alert if you see this particular job crash at least twice within 5 to 6 minutes, because that would probably indicate that the job is failing to start back up, so there's actually some kind of problem.
Splunk alerts are great. I talked a bit about this when I talked about my Rev catastrophe. One of the faults leading up to that catastrophe was that my Rev backups weren't working properly, and although they were sending me an email, I wasn't reading the email. I mean, completely my fault, right?
Yeah.
The backups were failing. It was noted in the email, but I wasn't looking at the email. So one of the things that I did after we fixed things and I reconfigured backups is I set them up so they wrote a special log file, and if the backups fail, it writes a special code to that log file, and that log file is ingested into Splunk. So I've got a nice history of that log file, like, for as long as I feel like retaining it. And B, I can set up a Splunk alert that if it sees that special code, it then alerts me via Slack. I think I was doing it. So it sends me a nice alert in Slack, which is something I have open all day and I'm looking at anyway, which I thought was actually, a pretty nice integration, and should be a lot more in my face. If it fails again, it won't just be buried in my inbox like so many other things. So yeah, alerts out of whatever log management system you're using are definitely a useful thing.
And just the fact, when you have it set up, where you can have it set up with logs feeding in, it's pretty close to real time, at least in our environment. So something we can do. We have the occasional crawler attack, and something we can do. We set up a queries. It's like, okay, we see that the load is impossibly high on these boxes. Let me have last 5 minutes of all hits on all services on those boxes. And so then typically you're just like, okay, who are the big IPs here? And then you've got a remediation situation.
Yeah, we've used similar real-time log data for lots of sort of attacks like that. We had a case where somebody from China was brute forcing a bunch of our WordPress logins. You may remember this. And it was just like randomly locking people out. They were hitting our lockout policy. But it was just frequent enough that it wasn't like lockout, wait, lockout period X, and then lockout again, and then wait, lockout period X, and wait, lockout again. It was very inconsistent. Like you'd come into work in the morning and certain people were locked out, and then they would clear via the lockout policy because it would auto clear eventually. And then they'd be fine all day long. And then overnight they get locked out again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And watching the Splunk logs really helped us nail that down. It's like, oh yeah, look at all of these login failed attempts from just random IPs coming from China. And it really helped us identify the problem across several services. In the old days, when you didn't have a aggregation point of all your logs, you'd be on a dozen web servers trying to tail all the logs and look for similarities. It was almost impossible. Mm-hmm. And believe me, I've been in those days. Grep and awk and sed and all kinds of craziness.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a web server whose load is claiming to be between 200 and 300, it may not really be possible to get a shell on that thing and actually actually look at the logs. But as long as some of those logs made it into Splunk before the system went away, you have a fighting chance.
Get the data. And through a config management system like Puppet, like we use, you can make sure that a lot of your system logs are automatically put into Splunk. And if you're better with Puppet than I am, Charles, we could you could have pretty much anything that you configure on the fly automatically added into Splunk, which is nice because it becomes less of a config management burden. You don't have to remember, oh, I added a new vhost, I better add it to Splunk. It's just there, right? If you're doing it all with a config management tool. So that's one way to make things a little more bearable from a configuration perspective.
Definitely I don't want to lose my mind situation.
Yeah, right. Because when you're talking about, I mean, I don't know how many, Charles, maybe you have a number. I don't know how many virtual hosts we deal with from our web presence, but it's a lot. It's got to be a lot.
I'm sure it is.
Right. And trying to make sure all of them are in Splunk. I mean, Charles, I think you and your team do a pretty good job of getting it added from the Apache level, but our proxy server doesn't do it yet. Because
I mean, on the Apache side, we don't automate that because we don't provision those hosts with Puppet. But that's a case of having to go down the checklist, and we've occasionally found we missed some and had to go back. But yeah, I mean, I think we've got something like 60 or 70, and it does add up. It's a reason, though again, you only have to do it once.
Yeah, right. It would be nice though to say, I've got a new vhost, it's going on this server, and then it just sort of happens via Puppet or Chef or whatever, Ansible or whatever you're using as your config management. So, yeah, that's there's always some way to make things better, and for us, that's one of them. So it looks like Jason dropped out for his call. I don't know if we have much more to chat about for logs.
I just thought I'd mention, because I feel like I'm probably the last person to learn this, but lots of Docker containers are set to just send their logs to stdin, and there's a Docker command to basically tail the container and get that log data. Yep. That's the right way to do that. I didn't know that. I feel really dumb, but hopefully that will help somebody else.
That's a good point. It's not something that I think typically people would think of. Docker, as simple as it can be to use and stand up containers applications, it also has some interesting ways to facilitate your normal sysadmin duties, right?
Right.
Even outside of logs, you talk about interfacing with the local shell, if it even has a shell capability, right? There's a command for that. We always joke about there being an app for that or a dongle for that. Well, there's a command for that when it comes to Docker, because there's a lot of extensible things you can do with Docker that you would think either isn't possible, should be native in a different form, or is just really weird. And it's evolved a lot in the last couple of years. I mean, I wouldn't say that Docker has changed considerably over the last couple of years, but there are a lot of features that have been added, things have been moved, deprecated. So it's a very interesting abstraction of running applications.
Yeah, Docker's awesome, but it definitely, as you said, brings some new challenges, especially on topic, from a logging perspective, because it's all containerized, right? So where do you put those logs? How do you get them into your log management? How do you save them? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, our current use case is just local development, so we don't care about retention. We just need to be able to
Right.
See them as stuff is breaking.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and things break at a very mass scale when you things on a Docker or a cluster of hosts. Put it that way.
Right.
Been there a couple times. It's fun. What do you mean? The config JSON file isn't being read. What? Where's all the data? Oh, it's in a different directory. Oh, let me fix that real quick.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Whoops. All right. Yeah, any final thoughts on logging or log management before I play the outro?
It's important.
It's important. Sounds like your child has some input on logging.
Logs
she
are
knocks over
good.
your laptop. Logs are good. Yes, they are. As long as you're watching them. I mean, that's really the key. Log data without some eyes on it, or without some alerts or something. It's not all that useful. It's just data filling up disk. So someone needs to look at it, whether you've got a sysadmin that checks them daily, or whether you've got a full-time analyst. You need to have somebody checking that data or alerting on that data or something.
Indeed.
Yeah, but of course, the other side of the coin there is sometimes you don't know that you needed a particular log until you needed it.
Until it's too late. That's the worst. That is the worst.
Broken.
Yeah.
Yep.
You mean this has been logging the entire time? Why didn't we keep eyes on this? Or the opposite. Wait, that log filled up our disk?
Ah!
Existed, right? That's another too. Why would you set it to ultimate debug level 4? Verbosity equals extreme. Anyways, that's a yammer.
I found a 1 gigabyte messages on one of our servers last week.
Was it not rotating, or
it
was it just
rotating? That was the last 4 days.
Ouch!
I'll tell you about it tomorrow.
Wow, that's a lot of data. Wow.
For 4 days, yes, that is a lot of data.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some systems that just log a lot of data. I mean, we run Zimbra for email, and it probably writes several gigabytes a day in various log files, and we just throw it all into Splunk and hope for the best. That's probably, I don't know, a third or maybe a quarter of our log data for the day that goes into Splunk, which is just generated from various pieces of Zimbra, because there's just that much data, mail data, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it. But it comes in handy. And having it all in one place, being able to query all of it at once, really comes in handy. So it's worth it. I think it's worth it. All right, so I think we're going to call that a close for tonight. Like I said, Jason already cut out on us. Dustin and Charles and Jason, thank you for being with us tonight. And thank you for everybody that interacted with the show tonight. I've been having trouble keeping up. There's chat in YouTube. There's chat on Slack. It's everywhere. Soon there'll be chat on Reddit, too. Apparently, we have a subreddit now. r/Iron Sysadmin. I'm gonna have to learn the Reddits now.
Yes, I have to make you a mod. And we have to figure out a spam bot, an effective one.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I've not really gotten into Reddit for all these years. Maybe now I finally have a reason.
Oh, we can learn you. I'm a daily Redditor.
Yeah, no, I mean, back in the day, I was big on message forums and whatnot. And as far as I'm concerned, Reddit is just the extension of what message forums became. I just haven't had time for them lately. So, whatever. So yeah, I've already posted in our subreddit. So, I'm the only one.
Oh, wowzer.
See that? I'm good. I did that while you were chatting before.
I wasn't even paying attention. Shame on me.
So, anybody who wants to find this show on a more regular basis, look us up on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play Podcasts. We're on all the places you might find podcasts. If you don't find us someplace, let me know and I'll get us added. You can also join our Slack channel. If you go to ironsysadmin.com/Slack, it should redirect you right to an open invite link, and you'll be able to join right up to our Slack workspace channel, whatever. We're on the socials, Facebook, Twitter. We don't have an Instagram. I can't imagine how a podcast would have a decent Instagram channel or Instagram account, right?
Please, let's never do that. I'm sorry, but no.
Let's never do Instagram.
How's that?
I tell you what, for my Jeep stuff, I have an Instagram account because it's all very visual stuff and there's pictures and whatever. I just cannot wrap my head around how Instagram is supposed to work. The interface is so odd. Everything has to have a picture associated with it. I mean, that's the way Instagram works. It's like just sharing someone else's content is a pain in the ass. I don't.
Well, we could always have a contest. My log is bigger than yours, and try to fit it, inside.
Yeah, maybe I'm just getting old, and I need my old BBSs back. They were easy. Telnet
back in a container. Come on, we can architect something.
I honestly want to run a major BBS in DOSBox in a container on the Derby this year, but I don't know if I'm going to have time to figure that out. Can you imagine DOSBox in a Docker container running a BBS? In previous years, I've run Circle Mud. This year, I maybe not this year. Some year, I want to get major BBS running on my hat. That would be awesome.
That would be a pretty awesome feat.
Yes. So, yeah, I think that's everything for tonight. Look us up on the socials, and you can interact with us post-show. If you want to interact with us live, the second and fourth Wednesday of every month, you can watch us live on YouTube. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll get notified when we go live. And I think we're going to call it a night. Thank you, everyone who's interacted with us tonight. It's made it a very distracting show. Thank you all, and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
I don't know if I can list all the people that were chatting. Maybe there's only a handful here. Looks like Roy from our Slack was chatting on YouTube. Man, there is so much chat tonight. This is awesome.
It's great. I'm glad. We've always been yearning to have instead of talking to each other.
We got Roy. We got someone calls themselves No Thanks. Please join our Slack and we'll interact with you more. Rob Langford here. Rich Gillespie. I don't know.
It looks like I can't chat unless I create a channel.
You might have to. Is he added to the list of?
Yeah, I'll give you some info, Charles, on how to use the chat once we're off air. It's not that difficult.
Wait, you don't want to do it now?
Yeah. So thank you, folks, for interacting, and I hope to see you in Slack so we can chat more. Some pretty interesting stuff went by in the chat that I wasn't able to read through. But yeah, thank you all for watching and interacting. I'm going to stop the broadcast. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.